For the record, my wife and I are pretty normal folks. We don't do drugs, we are social drinkers, but let's say we don't have a lot of friends except other couples with children, so basically we don't drink that much. All that to state that when this event took place, we were absolutely lucid and not under influence. I'm 200% sure of what I saw. My only regret is that I didn't record it or took pictures as evidence. It was summer 2013. My wife was 5 months pregnant, so we decided to look for a nice house to rent on the countryside. We browsed a well known website and found a small villa near a vineyard. The owner called us very quickly. We will call him Gerard. Gerard was a fellow in his late 50s. His picture on the website displayed a posh guy wearing small glasses. He was really caring and nice. After a little research on the internet, this guy was running an art gallery. He told us he wouldn't be there to give us the key, but a colleague would welcome us. The day we arrived, a Slavic woman in her 40s was there. She gave us the key, jumped in a sport car, and left. It took 5 minutes. The house was beautiful. We were so excited to have so much room just for us. 15 minutes after the check in, we were having a drink by the swimming pool. Something felt weird about the inside of the house though. It had clearly been furbished by a home staging designer, as everything was perfect and new. Somehow the frames had generic pictures inside it, like stock pictures. The poses seemed too unnatural, and you couldn't recognize one person from a picture to another. My wife decided to store our empty luggage on top of a big cupboard, but she clumsily hit a little box and made it fall on the floor. It contained two pencils and a keychain with two small keys. We put it back where it fell from and started to feel hungry, so we went to cook dinner. The weather was lovely. On that very night, we stayed on the roof and watched the sunset. Then my wife felt exhausted and went to bed. I was reading on the roof when my eyes got stuck on a small staircase behind the pool house. I tried not to pay attention but ended up heading for that staircase. That stair was made of steel and led to a little cellar. It was a dusty and smelly corridor with a solid oak door at the end. That door was closed by two padlocks. I realized I wasn't minding my own business, so I went back upstairs. 1 hour later, I was still thinking about that door and what was behind it. I suddenly remembered the keychain with the two small keys. Now it was obvious. I couldn't help going back there to try the keys. Once in front of the door, it was now sure the key would match. The padlock gave in 2 seconds. When I opened the door, a strong smell hit me, like mold mixed with chemicals. It was clear I just entered a photo lab. On a shelf, hundreds of pictures going from nudes to hardcore pornography. On five of them, I positively recognized Gerard with a black woman. She was attached by a rope to the wrist. Utterly shocked, I found two plastic boxes with photographs of teen pornography. By the writings on the picture, it went from 2004 to present days. Near the red room, I found more pictures of very violent bondage scenes. The woman had bruises and cuts. There also were an old camera and dozen tapes, but my heart was already on the brink of explosion, so I didn't watch any of these. I closed the door and sat by the pool for 45 minutes. I needed to put it all back together and decide what to do. I showed the pictures to my wife and we left the house that very night. We called the cops on the way home and they told us to keep us informed. They never did. 1 week later, I had a message on my answer phone. It was Gerard. He apologized to us, stating everything I saw was staged. He insisted he worked for magazines and sometimes they ordered shocking pictures. I never believed an inch of what he said, neither my wife. I called him back to tell him he had to refund us as the website asked him to do so, but he never answered. I called him again 3 weeks later to ask him to refund, but I reached a grocery store instead. There was absolutely no more trace of that guy on the internet. To this day, we don't know for sure. Still, every now and then we bring it up knowing we will never get an answer. To give some explanation and background knowledge for this whole encounter, I was around 15 at the time this occurred. I was camping out in the middle of nowhere with my family and part of my extended family, my aunt, uncle, and cousins. I was the oldest kid there in the RV, So you can probably understand how it felt to have no one else to do stupid crap I did back then with. With a good 2 year gap between me and the inferiors, it was almost like Nirvana when I got to the campground and met the other teenagers. These were all people we knew fairly well from previous camping trips, so it was considered normal to hit off with them from the start and act like we'd known each other forever within an hour. Now, the story. My parents trusted me a lot, not a lie. I liked my fun, but I liked getting home in time for dinner equally as much. So when I was gone most of the day with the other people from the camp, I didn't think much of it. The only rule was that I had to be back at the RV to eat dinner and before 8:30 in the evening. So picture this. A group of six teenagers, 15 to 16, out in the middle of the woods with no adult supervision for the vast majority of the day. Just a recipe for success right there. But this particular day, we found a neat little deer trail we haven't found in the 2 years we've been there before. On second thought, though it didn't really seem like a deer trail, it snaked through a really thick part of the underbrush, maybe a foot of clear ground, 3.5 feet clear of branches going upwards. It's a really hard thing to pick out from the brush unless you're either really looking or know it was there. It was promptly explored, marked with a broken branch outside of the entrance, and quickly forgotten. Except, I remember this special little tunnel. That night, while we were all eating dinner, one of the adults proposed that we play manhunt out in the woods. At night, not everyone was totally on board with this idea, but in the grand scheme of the plan, they were all crushed down like autumn leaves. Everyone got a flashlight, and everyone was assigned to a team. For those of you who aren't sure what manhunt is, here's an explanation. Everyone playing is given a flashlight and are divided into two groups. It's basically like glorified flashlight tag, but there's a catch. As you catch people, you have to correctly identify who they are, and if you can, they join forces with the hunters. The last man standing gets the candy bar or something, whatever's being offered as a prize. This is how we played it. Anyways, for the first round, I get lumped in with the runners, those who are getting chased by the hunters. We get a 5 minute head start to run, climb a tree, whatever the hell we want to do to evade the hunters. Usually, I'm the one up in a tree, but that never really worked out being the winning spot. So, to try and score a win for once, I decided to play the cat and use one, surefire method of escape. And the hiding spot was the rude little path through the thicket. It took most of the head start time to find the damn thing, because it was so well hidden and out of the way. As I passed hidden spots, I heard hushed, smothered whispering between siblings who were questioning my actions like a bird's wings rustling when it's fluffing itself. It should be noted that I have bad hearing. My ears are possibly my greatest asset in this game, but when I'm just reaching a destination, I hear the short blast of the air horn announcing that the 5 minutes are up. I swarmed over into the miniature little path in the undergrowth, shuffling on my hands and knees until I'm about halfway in, crouching down like some huge, malformed quail. The hunters are doing an initial sweep through the trails, looking for obvious hiders and people caught out trying to change spots. When they finally reach me, they reach a dead end and go straight back. I try to readjust myself and crawl further down the tunnel. I honestly don't know how it happened, but I found an even more hidden path within that one, and accidentally I dragged my stupid body down the rabbit hole. Except, instead of ending at a dead end, this one ended in a slight hollow. I don't ever want to describe exactly what I found there. I'm sorry, but I just can't. It was a younger looking woman, naked, covered in laceration and stab wounds in a fatal position. Her glassy glazed eyes seemed to look straight through me. I won't go any further than that. I was too scared to scream, and I froze there while dark, burgundy stains formed on my jeans. I froze there, in a pseudo catatonic position, like a marble carving from what felt like hours. And then I heard someone else coming along that path. Have you ever been so scared that for one moment, one insane moment, you truly considered something incredibly stupid as a viable option to escape? That was one of those times. I let out a short trembling whimper and started moving. Whoever was on the path stopped and then eagerly started moving forward again. I could hear them panting, uneven breaths of a man, a horrible marker of whoever was getting closer and closer to me by the second. By some wondrous, beautiful miracle, he missed the path leading to the brushy hollow. I heard him moving down past the entrance, dragging something clunky and awkward behind him. I heard clicking noises and occasional efforts to silence the small, sharp noises. I heard a low curse somewhere towards the end of the tunnel, and I blasted out the undergrowth tunnel like a bullet forcing its way out of a barrel. Cracks, crushes, and obnoxious rustling was all around me as I heard the man sharply intake a breath and begin to move towards me. The hoarse, deep panting was getting closer and closer to me, a testament to how I was too slow at exiting. Somehow, I exploded out of the entrance, got into my wobbly, half asleep legs, and started booking it down the trail. The unknown pursuer was close behind me for a bit, but it seemed like he was too exhausted to chase me at the same speed for long. I know everyone loves to rip on the fact that people always trip in horror movies, but in all honesty, tripping is something I'm amazed I didn't do. With adrenaline coursing through me at the speed of Usain Bolt, trying to make my jello-like, unsteady walking appendages work to move me away from whoever was behind me was like trying to run on water. It felt like an eternity, but I finally reached the main trail, running back to the camp, and sprinted down it screaming bloody murder. Confused faces looked out from the trees, and I think someone called after me. Reaching the camp was easy, but trying to explain why I woke up half the people in the camp and brought it out the woods at breakneck speed was harder. When I finally choked the words out to explain, I remember the profound, insidious silence throughout the group of adults waiting at the mouth of the trail. I really don't remember a whole lot from that point on. I know the cops were called, and my mother and aunt ran shrieking and wailing along the trail, calling for other kids to come back to safety. When someone is yelling like that, you don't ignore it. They rounded everyone up in 30 seconds flat and barreled back into the camp. The police found a man out in the woods, creeping along the trail, clutching a knife. A black garbage bag with a plethora of sharp instruments, and a soul was found abandoned on the trail, some speckled and smeared with dry blood. I don't think there's really any getting over it. I still have nightmares sometimes of the man chasing me, breathing heavily down the back of my neck, trying to catch me. Sometimes he succeeds. No, I will not be providing further information as to where I am or where I was due to some security reasons. I had an issue with a stalker in the past, and I can't be putting my information out there at all. Sorry, guys. So, I'm new to Reddit, and I found this sub, and I think the story fits here. I've had a number of odd, frightening experiences in the woods since I'm a huge outside guy. I'm pretty much outside all the time I can manage it. One of these experiences I tried posting it, but it got rejected. I thought this one would sound too far fetched, but after reading some other stories on here, I decided I'll post it. So, this happened when I was much younger. I want to say freshman in high school, probably like 2008. There used to be this road near where I lived in California called Crook Road. It was barely a road, no one traveled on it, and it was surrounded by small patches of forest and some abandoned barns and houses. I would typically go there with my friends to skateboard and hang out. This one night, I was hanging out with two of my friends, Lucas and Dorian, and someone wanted to go to Crook Road to hang out since it was creepy at night. It might sound lame, but we loved exploring like a bunch of fifth graders and weren't really into smoking or anything, so what else was there to do? I asked my 20-year-old brother James if he could drive us down into one of the nature reserves by the road. This specific reserve was larger than the others and had a network of gravel paths leading through it. Basically, we were looking for unexplored territory to hike in. Soon one particular path we were traveling down had become so narrow, James thought the explorer couldn't pass through it, so we got out and walked for a while, chatting and just having fun. We walked through the woods for about half an hour until it got relatively dark and the sun was gone, at which point we turned around to head back to the car. It's now I should mention that, despite being near a lot of subdevelopments, this patch of forest was huge, I'd say about 1,000 acres, and rarely visited since it was easy to get lost in, especially at night. It was a challenge getting the car turned around, but James managed it, and we were off down the road. Dorian proposed we turn down a different path we had passed by earlier, since we had about another 40 minutes until our parents wanted us back, and we agreed. Down this path was a tiny pond Dorian wanted to check out to take pictures of since he hadn't gotten an opportunity to visit it at night. It was slow going since the road was even crappier than the main one we were travelling on that turned off a crook road. Minutes later, we got into a slight argument. Dorian was convinced that James had taken a wrong turn since we should have arrived at the pond by now, while James claimed that he had been driving straight this whole time. It was dark after all. Eventually, we came to a fork in a road that none of us were familiar with. None of us knew which way to go, so we ended up guessing and going left, hoping that both directions would ultimately lead back to the main path. None of us was scared or anything. In fact, we were actually excited and intrigued, driving through seemingly in the middle of nowhere at night. It was at this point we rounded a small bend in the road, and the headlights fell upon a surreal sight. There was four figures emerging from the forest and crossing the road, wearing what looked to be long cloaks with hoods up and holding flashlights. One guy at the back of the group was dragging a large duffel bag, a human-sized duffel bag. We all froze and stopped mid-conversation, and as soon as our high beam landed on the four figures, they froze as well. James pulled to the left and went around them. Driving past them felt like an eternity because we couldn't have been going over 5 miles per hour due to the shitty condition of the road. Sitting in the passenger seat, I could see them inches beyond my window, and they were indeed wearing black robes and holding flashlights. I didn't get a good look at the bag, but judging by the way the guy was holding it, something heavy was inside the bag. None of us said a word until the road straightened out and we were far past these guys, at which point James just muttered, "What the hell was that?" We continued down the road in silence until I heard Lucas say, "Holy shit," and repeat himself in a louder, panicked voice. He said, "They're fucking coming back." I twisted around in my chair to see Lucas pointing out the back window. I could barely see anything, but about 100 yards away, we saw the beams of four flashlights shaking erratically. The guys were without a doubt running after us. All of us screamed at James to floor it, and he sped down the road. The car was bouncing and shaking uncontrollably as we flew over burns and potholes. I kept my eyes on the flashlight beams until we rounded another bend in the road and they were out of sight. Thankfully, the path did manage to take us back to the main path. James gunned it down the path until we popped off by Crook Road and got the hell out of there. The weirdest thing about it was, there couldn't have been a vehicle anywhere near those guys for 50 miles in either direction. We would have seen one if there had been. We had explored most of that area before, and there wasn't anything to pull off that road and park. We didn't say anything more until we were back at my place. We talked about it for a bit, and then my friends went home, and James and I went to bed. I didn't know if I could call the cops or not, but James, who I guess would be the adult in the situation, seemed reluctant, so I dropped it. I never told my parents until just before writing this, and they kind of scolded me for not telling them, and that we should have contacted the authorities just to report some suspicious people in the preserves. I still wish to know how the hell they got there, where they were going, and what was inside the bag.